Hi all, in this video we are looking at cooking and how to keep your villagers fed in ASKA. Managing thirst and hunger is an important survival aspect when playing ASKA, and since it's your job to grow your village and recruit more villagers to help with tasks at hand, you of course need to not only keep yourself fed but also your tribesmen. The first thing you'll do when starting out in game is gathering food like berries, mussels or onions. And while eating raw food is an easy way to control hunger, it won't keep you sated for long. So your next step will be to build a campfire and upgrade it to a barbecue where you can cook raw red meat, some vegetables, mushrooms and fish. Cooked food will always be better at restoring your hunger levels, so if you can, cook it. Assigning a villager to tend to your barbecue means they will take care of procuring resources from storage, filleting fish and large meat hunks, and keep grilling throughout their work hours as long as you have assigned cooking tasks to them. Now, while your village could technically survive by having only multiple barbecue stations, it's not really the most efficient. At least not after reaching a certain number of villagers and for surviving winters. So let's talk about a very important workstation in ASKA, and that's the cooking house. One requirement for building a cooking house is to have built a gatherer's hut. That's the upgraded version of the gatherer's pit. One tip for selecting a building location is to make sure that a well is close by, or at least not too far from the cooking house. Cooking requires a lot of water, and ideally you want to have a dedicated well that isn't used by your villagers, or if you have one, your farm. Now, once you have built the cooking house, you might be wondering what can be cooked and how, and where are all the recipes? In order to have any recipes in your cooking house, you need to discover them first. That means experimenting with a combination of ingredients and different quantities of water. Every time you unlock a new recipe, you'll get a pop-up that lets you know about your discovery. Once discovered, the recipe will also be added to your journal and become an option for the tasks of the cooking house. This allows you to easily look up recipes retrospectively. Discovering cooking recipes is key to running your cooking house, as assigned villagers won't be able to cook anything without them. Let's say you have caught plenty of fish but never discovered any of the related cooking recipes. Then your villagers will never use these valuable resources as you can't assign them the corresponding tasks. Let's talk about tasks. Once you have assigned a villager to your cooking house, you have to give them tasks, otherwise they won't know what to do. Assigning tasks is easy. Simply click Q when hovering over your cooking house, or navigate to the cooking house menu remotely from your tab menu. Then click Add Task. You'll then see a list of available recipes you have unlocked. Select the recipe and number of dishes the cook is supposed to prepare, and add. Your cook will now always cook the specified number of dishes and add them to the prepared food storage as long as it's not full. Once villagers take from this storage, the cook will work on refilling it again, based on quantities assigned to each dish. A few more things about cooking. Your cooking stove will require fuel. If you have a villager assigned to your cooking house, they will take care of it. Otherwise, it's down to you. And if you cook yourself, then keep in mind that food will burn if you don't take it out a short while after it's been cooked. So make sure to keep an eye on the cooking process. And different dishes also have different cooking times. Should your villager's cooking shift end mid-cooking process, they might also leave food out to burn. So you'll occasionally find a piece of coal around your cooking house. Hopefully with future updates, cooks will finish their last task before heading home to avoid this. Oh, and your assigned villagers will need knives so they can cut up large meat hunks and fish. While we won't go into all cooking recipes in this guide, a good rule of thumb for discovering and cooking any dishes is that using 2 water in combination with 4 resources usually creates a stew, and using 4 water as soup. While you get 4 soups and only 2 stews as a result, stews are usually more nourishing. While we usually used 4 of the same resources to discover new recipes, you will quickly learn that you generally only need 3, or in case of meat and fish dishes, 1 of the same ingredient, while using random fillers for the remaining slots. For example, you could use 4 meat to create a meat stew, but you can also use only 1 in combination with 3 random raw foods. We will have a guide about cooking recipes on our channel if you want to learn more. Different dishes also provide you with different buffs. Meat usually grants a buff to strength, vegetables buff stamina, fish is good for dexterity, and some vegetables like onions, garlic and cabbage also have healing properties. And as mentioned earlier, some dishes cook faster than others, for example fish. A good thing to keep in mind when you need something fast. Now, since we have covered the basics, let's talk about why ramping up your food production is so important. First of all, the more villagers you get, the more food you logically need. But more importantly, during at least the initial winter, it might be more challenging for your villagers to gather resources. It's therefore recommended to slowly work on producing more food and building up food storage for winter seasons. On that topic, our first tip would be to hire a second cook as soon as you can afford it. Ideally, you would want a cook that works during the day and one that works during nights. So keep an eye out for suitable villagers with one of the 2 night perks. Having a cook prepare food during the night ensures your villagers will have something to eat once they get up. Our next tip would be to stagger the arrival of your villagers in the morning to help your cook keeping up with the demand. For instance, have some villagers start their day at 7, some at 8 and some at 9 in the morning. If you do that, you won't have all of them arriving at the cooking house or food storage at the same time as to give your cook or cooks time to catch up with demand. Early on, it might also be an idea to make sure your cook gets up a few hours earlier than everyone else. Once a cook is able to regularly fill all the 15 slots available at the cooking house for cooked food, it becomes key to build a storage unit for prepared food in your warehouse. If you can't afford a warehouse worker right away, you might struggle to keep it stocked at first, but over time you'll get the hang of it. Though a warehouse worker for sure made our life a lot easier. After that, your next step might be to build a second cooking house. We felt we needed that when we reached 20 villagers as our warehouse storage was not really filling up, though your experience might differ. We also couldn't afford to assign a villager initially, so for a while we ended up using the second cooking house to cook ourselves. This allowed us to ramp up production temporarily to keep everyone well fed during our first winter. Once we had a villager to spare, we assigned a daytime cook and later a night shift worker. In case you notice that your villagers are stealing a lot of raw food from your cooking house or the gatherer's hut, there might be a few reasons for that. One is that if your raw food storage is closer to your housing than the cooking house, then villagers might be lazy and grab food there first. Or it could also be an early indication that your cook can't keep up with demand. Unfortunately, at least for now, we can't whitelist individual storage containers in warehouses. Otherwise, it would have been great to have raw food storage containers that could only be accessed by cooks. A rather expensive workaround is having a separate warehouse for raw food storage, whitelisting only the cooks and a dedicated warehouse worker. However, this is definitely not an early game solution, but at least something to keep in mind for when you have a well-running village and can afford it. While all of this for sure requires a bit of micromanagement initially, you will learn and improve your setup eventually. Of course, playing co-op with at least one other player makes this not easy but a lot easier. We hope you found this video helpful and will have an easier time when building your village. If you like what we do, Feel free to comment and please give us a thumbs up and subscribe.